what we're thinking, okay, is that this in theory should be a very good year for the Green Party to engage Canadians in agriculture policy because of what is happening with the climate, right? That we have seen Canadian agriculture is under threat, and the things that are happening right now are things that scientists have been warning us for decades. That climate change will cause extreme weather events, unprecedented droughts, heat waves, flash floods, everything. And we're seeing a gallery of all of those things. And against all of this is the backdrop of the COVID pandemic. So it's impossible not to see the many ways in which our agriculture and food systems are being hit by this perfect storm. So in terms of the Green Party and agriculture, we know that agriculture and food system are by nature, they're especially vulnerable to these environmental and economic risks. And at the same time, this sector is vital because we all have to eat, right? So that's why the agriculture sector always, not only in Canada, but everywhere, has received different forms of support from governments in the form of subsidies, incentives, transfers. And this is one thing that our platform it's going to say when it's released, which should be in the next couple of days, is that because this policy support is a powerful tool, it can tip the scale, and it will determine which agriculture and food system prosper and which decline, which systems develop in the country. So a core pillar of our platform is what we call the green shift, because in Canada, we have been seeing that the orientation of federal government policies, past and present, it has contributed to these trends that we're seeing in the sector for a long time, decreasing farm numbers, increasing farm size, and this shift to this more industrial system and a greater role of transnational agribusinesses, which have benefited directly from these taxpayer-funded policies. But at the same time, these systems that are based in monocultures, intensive livestock, etc., high inputs, we think they are more vulnerable to these weather extremes, pest diseases, drought, heat waves, etc., and even labor disruption, which is another big challenge right now for the system. And it's usually the farmer who bears the brunt of the risk. So we think that we have to address the vulnerabilities in the system. And what we're saying in our platform is that yes, we have to address the immediate challenge in the short term and protect farmers from these losses that can kind of decimate our agriculture. But at the same time, we have to think long term. And right now, for example, there's some recent changes to federal business risk management programs, and I guess most of them are positive and are trying to shelter farmers a little bit from this crisis. But these are reactive, they are short term. And I think there is a need to restructure these business management programs so they are more responsive to this climate disaster type of thing, but also more inclusive and more equitable, and the money gets divided up in a more in a fair way. And we have to think long term, and that means that we have to also work to make our systems, our food and agriculture system, more resilient in the long term. And in order to do that, we have to have a very close look at the structure of our investments, which are these government supports that I was talking about earlier, and invest more in research infrastructure, business development that supports diversification, more biodiversity, and practices that improve water, nutrient retention, soil organic matter, etc., as well as to strengthen value chains that are local or regional, and not most of the effort being devoted to this, to supporting these commodities that are export commodities, because that has been pretty much the history of our agricultural investment. It's not that there is no government support for improving carbon retention in the soil. Actually, there's a whole suite of new programs. It's Climate Solutions that is trying to invest in this area. It's the balance. It's the balance of our whole suite of programs that over the years, over many years, have been tipping the balance. This is a very powerful policy tool, this support for agriculture, and it has been tipping the balance in a certain way. So what we need to do is to balance things out, and that will in itself help with having systems that are more resilient to all these climate threats. And actually, it's interesting because you were asking in one of the questions you shared with us earlier, you were asking about the COVID making people wake up to the importance of having domestic supply chains that are less vulnerable, and this is the same thing, right? We understand the importance of international trade for Canada. International trade is the bread and butter of many of our farmers, but at the same time, we are seeing the vulnerabilities when all these supply chains that have been incentivized by our policies are global, and then we cannot have to balance things out and also support the ones that are more regional. We import, Canada is the 5th largest exporter of agriculture and agri-food, but it's also something like the 6th or 7th, I think the 6th largest importer. And this is not just oranges and bananas, this is things that can also be produced in Canada, but because of the way these supply chains work, if they're being sourced elsewhere, and then if that gets interrupted, your vulnerability goes up.